How was the logjam with the rights cleared up?
It was two things that happened. Uh, the, the year, the copyright year, was advancing, at which it would become public domain. The rights were granted in advance of that, but it certainly was the fact that they were going to have to deal with the piece being available. And I think the Met was also helpful in reassuring the holders of the rights that this was a worthwhile thing. And very early, Matthew Broccoli, who was the great Fitzgerald guy, got an advance outline of the libretto and liked it a lot. And he was a great friend of the project all the way.
And how did the Met get involved? Through Maestro Levine? Or?
One day, a letter came from Levine with no preface or prelude whatsoever, inviting me to write an opera for the Met, in the most polite terms you can imagine. And the project developed fairly quickly, the abrasive issue being the libretto.
You wrote it yourself?
Eventually. This was not my intention. And Sarah Billinghurst, the wonderful artistic administrator at the Met, once said in one of my conferences with her, said, "I'm here to keep you from writing that libretto. That's my job. And how are your conferences going with all the various people?" And I said, "It's all going very well." But eventually I was moving on the music, and I was using what I thought was a dummy libretto that is an old practice, one which we know from the old opera composers.
Rossini.
Yes, Verdi did it quite often, moving right ahead because I had good, strong musical ideas. And then eventually I was showing this to Sarah Billinghurst and the people at the Met and saying, "I just hope I can get somebody to do this a little better." And eventually it was clear that for one reason or another, the librettists I was talking to had issues that I felt were unsolvable. Either they were great writers or screenwriters or whatever they were, but they hadn't any opera experience, or they were extremely august and were never going to change a word. Working with myself as a librettist was a very harmonious relationship. Every time I needed to change a phrase or a word, I agreed.
You just did it.
Yes. Yeah. And particularly with all the chorus music, when I got to the chorus, I was shocked to find that nothing in the whole draft of the chorus was usable, because I had changed concept about the chorus. I had this very ambitious idea that the chorus shouldn't sing anything except based on things they'd heard. In other words, they could not come with a message to deliver, that everything that they did in this opera was going to be a response to witnessing something, which meant that every line I had written for the chorus had to be tossed out. Now, whether librettist X, who was the likely librettist, would have been happy to do that, I don't know. But I was okay with it, for sure.
Which came first, the words or the music, or did you develop them simultaneously?
Often the music ran ahead of the words in terms of the shape of the scene or the basic sort of melodic spine, and I found myself fitting words or shaping words around a musical idea. So I would say more than half the time, far more than half the time, music was preceding words.
Mm-hmm. Since opera is a collaborative enterprise, at what point did people begin telling you what they wanted, either the stage director or Maestro Levine?
Well, I had people consulting on the libretto all along.
Mm-hmm.
Susan Fader, my publisher, and Michael Knott was seeing the libretto. And one of the things both of them said that bothered me a little at first, but they said, "You're leaving out some of the famous little speeches in the thing, or moments. Gatsby, they're a rotten crowd. Mm-hmm. You're worth the whole damn bunch put together." I didn't put that in. I thought, that's such a memorable little bit. If I said it, it can't be the way people want to hear it. Michael Knott and Susan Fader came back on all those places and said, "You've got to have those. people are going to be shortchanged if they don't turn up. So all of those touchstone moments, that the famous lines from the thing eventually are there. You know, her voice is full of money. I wasn't going to put that in. I thought these are the things that will challenge the audience. No, I have my setting. You know, that's not it. It turns out the one that bothered people most was Old Sport.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten more correctives about how that should be set. Again, same problem. That is that the preconceived image is particularly strong at certain moments in a text like that. But eventually, I'd have to say each one is confronted. There's none of those big, very, very well-known moments that people don't hear. I realized, in fact, that the main thing about a famous, sort of almost national text like this is that you have the advantage that people are curious, and you have the disadvantage that people think they know how it should go.
This was commissioned by the Metropolitan Opera to celebrate Maestro Levine's 25 years, first 25 years at the Met. Did he have any specific requests or interests?
He didn't, except it turned out that both of us had the same worries about the production plan. And that was an interesting sequence. When they sent out the photographs of their models, and we both responded that we were worried that the intimate sort of scenes in the drawing room of Tom and Daisy should be enclosed. They were in full open stage with a couple of pieces of furniture in the middle of the stage. And
a radio and two lawn chairs.
Right. And both Jim and I apparently wrote back to or contacted Tom Clark and said, we're worried about this acoustically, and we're worried about the impression of a kind of vast prairie instead of an intimate scene. And they came back with sort of a practical rationale, which is because of the interludes and because of the great amount of movement between certain scenes, that they needed this more minimal approach for some of the indoor scenes. And to this day, I'd have to say, I think that this disagreement was germane to the result.